I suppose I did publishing for a couple of years. That got me into legal marketing. And just after I got back from Vegas and my wedding, I got made redundant from a small sort of legal tech company. And so then, besides spending 6 weeks playing golf and having fun after that, I decided to break out of the legal industry and find something new. And I found a mat leave at a wonderful agency called Martin Ward Anderson, who'd just been acquired by Randstad. And I just fell in love with the recruitment world from there on in. And a lot of it was to do with the people. A lot of it was to do with my boss, Richard Wright, who's an absolute superstar and still a great friend. And yeah, just the connections that I made and the speed at which the business goes. So yeah, I was really happy with that. And then after a year and my colleagues there, I decided that I was going to carry on. So I did find another head of marketing job in a recruitment agency, did another year with them. I didn't like it as much. And I kind of figured then at that point, it was the cultural differences in different agencies. And I'd not really seen that before because I'd been in sort of publishing, legal publishing and legal businesses, tech businesses. But to actually have two very similar businesses, but very different cultures gave me a bit of a wake up call. Mm-hmm. So at that point I was like, right, no, I've got to start shopping around and start being a kind of conscious candidate. And again, that whole piece was around not just marketing myself, but also understanding the marketing of the businesses that I was going to go and work for. Yeah. And it was really simple for me to find organizations that had got good promise, but probably not really great at putting themselves out there, or they were really good at putting themselves out there. And then when you scratch under the surface of it, actually, there was this sort of fundamental flaw there. Things didn't gel together. Yeah. And that's when, you've got really great talented marketeers, but actually the business isn't really aligned with it. So yeah, I've had a couple of those jobs as well.
And it's all got to be to do with culture. It's got to be to do with the owner or the CEO. Yeah?
Yeah, definitely. I always have worked with the sort of C-suite, if you like, the MDs, the CEOs. But I've always been as well, and this might just be my personality, I don't like being told what to do, but I've always been the only person that's known about marketing. And it's not that I don't just then kind of teach them what I know, but I just go out and find more and bring that too. But I was the only really the sort of head of marketing for a lot of the businesses that I've worked for. Over the last couple of years, obviously, I've had some really great experience with Broadbean and Bullhorn. And actually, Bullhorn's got a phenomenal team. There's 40 people in marketing in Bullhorn, and every single one of them are amazing, talented individuals.
Hold on, but you're moving into running marketing at technology businesses.
Yeah.
What big differences? You same kind of industry, but big differences. How did you like it?
Oh well, going from Huntress to Broadbean was kind of like the ideal job for me. At the time, I'd done 2.5 years at Huntress and took it as far as I could. I kind of like short best, and 2 years is a really great time to be in an agency. I think after that, I get bored really quickly, and it becomes something that becomes a sort of repeat play. But yeah, going to Broadbean was just like, you'd seen it, you knew it was great, you knew the culture was fab, and this is like 6 years ago now. The industry was sort of like, yeah, Broadbean, you can't operate without it. So they got this great reputation for a good solution. But actually, again, when I got under the skin of it and actually got started with the job, there was this sort of perceived arrogance that was in the marketplace because they'd been the major player for such a long time. There wasn't really any decent competition. And actually, the sales guys and Dan McGuire before, and Kelly and Dan Martin and the team have done such a brilliant job of putting the business out there, but the translation down through to the clients became one of the biggest jobs that I did. Had to sort of really get under the skin of and do that damage reputation management piece.
Yeah.
So it's more about understanding what our clients actually really thought, but then breaking that down and re-establishing that relationship with them. And it was really easy with Broadbean because there were so many brilliant people who wanted to speak to clients, who wanted to help clients. And it was that cultural piece again that enabled the business to really transform in a very short space of time. So once I'd achieved that, and I think that's probably about, 6 months in, we're sitting around and we're thinking, right, okay, so we've now got a really nice open dialogue with our clients again, and our new business now needs to have that focus. And at the time of joining, we'd been operating in the corporate world, in-house recruitment, for a good couple of years, but the proposition was very different to the agency world. And because I'd come from the agency world, it was really easy for me to sort of keep that spinning over here, but then sort of, kind of go and dig out the research and find out how in-house is very different. And so I spent 2 years really focused on putting Broadbean on the map for the in-house industry, the in-house market, and got to know some really great people again, sort of built relationships up. And I think because of the way that I approached it, in that I needed to know in order for me to design the programs and the campaigns, it meant that the industry sort of saw another personality, another face, someone who was prepared to get stuck in rather than standing on the sidelines and, hiding behind a brand, but actually not being very visible or very contactable. And it kind of worked in our favor because at the same time as we were doing that, companies like LinkedIn were sort of starting to really get under the skin of recruiters and, to put their propositions out there. But actually, during that time, there wasn't really that much visibility of LinkedIn as people on the ground. And as we know, this industry is all about the people, and you might love or, loathe them, but at the same time, you can pick up the phone and actually speak to someone and they get what you're talking about if they put themselves out there. And so that's what we did. Every single person within the business that wanted to have visibility, that had some insight and knowledge, we'd sit down, we'd talk, we'd get the stories, we'd put it all out there. We'd go out and we'd see everybody, we'd be at every event that we can be. And I just made a ton of friends in the whole sort of event sector, which meant that we got invited to everything. So it didn't cost much, but it kind of took time.
Was this the point when you started applying demand generation to your marketing, or was it before that? Was it?
I'd always had, it's kind of going back to the very beginning, really. When I started writing those letters to the lawyers, I knew that communications was definitely going to be the way that you start an establishment relationship. I suppose it's the start of the sort of engagement funnel. And, back 20 years ago, we didn't have Twitter. We didn't have the sort of speed of connection that we do now. With Broadbean, because of the reputation it's already got and the technology being so established, it was about finding ways to get people to think about the business in other lights and apply it or have it at the heart of the recruitment process. And so what we did was we looked at our database, and again, we had, oh God, I think they only just changed like 2 years ago onto something that was cloud-based, which is awful to say, but you do what you do, right? You work with what you've got. And we had an on-premise system, and it was probably about 10 years out of date. But still, all our contacts were in there. And actually, the most important vital data was our client data that we had about our accounts and the sort of customer services stuff. Because then we knew who was using which job boards, who was using what systems, how frequently they were growing, and all of that information, which helped us to kind of form a picture of what their pain points were and what the sort of initial challenges were. Once you've got those bits, you know who you are, you know who they are, and you know what their challenges are, you can then start creating all your content. So that became a really easy kind of transition into marketing automation.
Yeah.
And at the time I hired Megan, who's still there and doing a brilliant job. And she'd just finished her degree in media studies. So to have somebody who'd got kind of like the modern technology sort of bent and very process driven with me, taking my ideas and then working with me to kind of get those programs up and out. We then brought on HubSpot, and we suddenly had this massive engine to really sort of fire things up and out from. And it was a bit piecemeal in the beginning. We were both learning our ropes and learning how to kind of pull it all together. But once you apply real common sense, it becomes a learning program. So yeah, that was kind of the turning point. And then working with Steve and the sales guys, being able to really monitor the amount of inbound inquiries and then linking the website. And I kind of call it onion sort of marketing. You start with the real idea and concept, and then you just layer it up and build it up and out kind of almost daily. You kind of have another idea, and no idea is stupid. It just needs to be put in the right place and in the right priority. And then, you've got a really great marketing funnel. So it's a bit more accident rather than design. But then once we got that absolute model there, it was really easy for us to start then thinking about, okay, so content on top. What's our content strategy? How do we break into new markets? How do we really shore up our reputation and the sales process for in-house versus agency? And then also as well, there's another complicating factor for Broadbean. It sits in the epicenter of the recruitment marketplace, but actually we also market to all the job boards and all the channels that you would use to distribute your jobs. And all of that technology then has to be, all of the sort of HR, HCM, ATS, CRM technology underneath has to receive all of that flow. So we've got to market to them too. So you've kind of got your clients in-house, your clients in agency, your ATS, CRM technology houses, and all the job boards and channels.
Yeah.
And we got to kind of bring all of that together, but talk to all four personalities. And then you start segmenting your marketplace down even further, and you find that you've got, 3 or 4 levels of agencies and 2 or 3 levels of different in-house sort of functions. You've got the globalization piece versus the localization stuff. And you end up with a matrix.
It becomes
Sorry.
complex.
It became easier to deal with because we did a lot of work to segment right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And as long as you try and keep it as simple as possible. And we put out sort of, our campaigns for the year would only be 1 or 2. There'd be in-house facing or there'd be agency facing. And our collateral or website content would talk to the key themes that we knew were those challenges all the time. So we didn't try and solve every problem through every channel. We just literally addressed 1 or 2. And again, just kind of keeping it that onion base, we were kind of almost going up and down vertically, aligning agencies with CRMs and job boards, and in-house with their ATSs and their job boards as well.
So go back a step. Can you give us a description of what marketing automation, demand generation, marketing automation is pretty much the same thing. So can you give us a kind of a description of what it is? Why is it different to email marketing or other forms of more kind of linear marketing?
I think for me, it's all about the focus. So you've done all your homework, you know who your target audience is and where they are and what they want in life and what keeps them up at night. But actually, it's about that. Say I've got 100 people that meet the criteria that I want as a client. I know who those 100 people are, but actually I've never met them. I've never engaged with them. But what demand gen is about putting your business, your brand, your proposition in front of them in such a way that you can compete with all the other noise and you can compete with all of the other content and just background white noise, and actually really be there at the moment when they have that kind of aha moment. And actually they then come to find you. But because it's almost like it's a bit of a teaser, isn't it? It's kind of like you're giving them the breadcrumbs and they come to find you. But when they find you, the value of that relationship is a much, much deeper level because they've taken the time out of their day to sort of follow the steps to you. Yeah. And whilst they're doing that, you can be focusing on another 100 or another 100. And actually, you've got them mass market kind of capabilities where you might be just one person. So automation for me is about being really focused, but actually being mass focused, if that makes sense too.
Yeah, so it's personalized at scale.
Yeah, exactly that. And you know, there's a couple of different ways of actually making demand gen strategies really work for you. But the most fundamental I find is just by really going back and answering those really simple questions, like almost even just doing a SWOT analysis on your own business and then figuring out, you know, who is it that you want as your A1 client. And then once you've got that definition, you can then go, right, well, this is my content. This will be the stuff that I can engage and nurture and bring down to my website, or bring down to my company, or even bring to the point where they're actually looking at the jobs on my website and saying, yeah, I like what this company represents. I like the way that they've brought me to them. I feel like they've got a stand-up reputation. And again, it's that reputation validity that's really important. And then, yeah, they click the button and they get engaged and they start the journey with you. And that sort of big step, I think demand gen removes all of the sort of in your face stuff that recruitment actually has a massive reputation for being.
Yeah.
And I like it that way, because I like being considered, and I like being not behind the scenes, because I don't think I could ever be behind the scenes, but, you know, having this sort of power and engine and thought process behind a relationship, because I know it's going to work. But telling somebody that I know that they need to know me is not going to be enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to link it to recruitment in a minute, but the one way that my colleague Scott McCrae describes demand gen is that 10 years ago, if you asked a sales director who's generating your pipeline, you asked a sales director in a tech company who's generating your pipeline, it would be 100% of it would be salespeople.
Yeah.
Ask the sales director today who's generating your pipeline, it would be nearly 100% marketing that is driving the pipeline. So it's for me, applying that to recruitment and talent, what I call talent demand gen. It's the focus for taking your total addressable market and driving awareness and desire in all of those people to want to work for your organization. Mm-hmm. Or for a recruitment agency, it would be driving demand from everybody that you want to place. Yeah. Into coming and doing it exclusively with you. So in terms of the steps, what are the sort of, for people that want to, like, on a practical basis, they want to go about doing this, what are the different elements that they need to put in place in order to create a real demand gen strategy?
I think holistically they need to think about the process that they've got in place right now, because if you're not really prepared for change, this is never going to work. And don't underestimate the simplicity of what a demand gen strategy could look like, because on paper it sounds really relatively simple and straightforward, but actually building it into your business or re-engineering your process for a demand gen strategy is a massive job. And you know, kind of companies like Bullhorn and Broadbean, we were fortunate at Broadbean because it was a relatively small company and I could kind of run with it. Bullhorn, very well established, have been operating demand gen since their conception, which is brilliant. Excuse me a sec. It's that January cold cough that won't go. So, yeah, I suppose you've got to have a full picture, have the full story there already. How do your candidates' clients come and find you as it is right now?
Yeah.
If it's through your job boards, potentially through Indeed or any of those sort of mechanisms where your jobs are being advertised and they're coming through, what are they coming through to? So step one is that top end of the funnel, like who's out there and how do they fall in to you? When you look at your website, is it dynamic? Can you capture the content? Can you give something back at that initial point? And what's the user journey through your website? So understanding analytics is, again, a massive skill that's required now in the sort of modern day recruitment business. You know, I was fortunate that 10 years ago, all I needed to do was be able to negotiate with job boards and kind of figure out how to do a PDF flyer saying, take a break, have a cup of tea and look at my shortlist. You know, that was then. This now is a multi-dimensional communication strategy and digital marketing strategy.
Marketing back then was much more of a like we'll make all the documents and things look nice, and we'll effectively do a lot of administration that the business doesn't want to do. So marketing was quite peripheral. It was peripheral in the way that other support functions are, and I think today it's very much more part of the business than it was then. You're on mute still. You're on mute.
You know, in the last years, but there is still that. Well, marketing, the process isn't broken, so the recruitment process isn't broken. So why would we want to kind of, you know, upset the apple cart, change all of this stuff internally, almost rearrange our business culture to make way for something that just makes stuff look pretty? So if that's your mindset, then you can drop off the call now, because we're not going to be able to convince you anywhere else. But in terms of, you know, the in-house recruitment world have got this and got it a lot quicker than the agency world. And I actually feel like the agency world has a real need to change and adapt much faster. Because I feel like, you know, there's a number of businesses that just can't operate after 2 to 3 years of what they're doing right now.
Yeah. Why do you think the agency world's picked up this kind of concept faster? Sorry, the in-house world picked up this kind of approach faster?
One, because the proximity to their marketing team. So, you know, really fortunately, employer branding became a really big thing 3-4 years ago. And the value that employees, once goodwill's there, and I did a lot of internal communications and stuff like that when I was at Martin Wood Anderson and Randstad. They really do believe in that whole employee empowerment piece. And once you've got that, you've kind of got this sort of engine that works for itself. And I think in-house recruiters saw that that was already happening and wanted a way to harness all of that. So, you know, those internal communications, those first ever intranets, the first sort of communications boards where you actually pull ideas and suggestions from your employees in. And I think that's the sort of the starting point really for, okay, so we've got all of this good stuff. How do we get to it faster? How can we turn that into additional value faster? That's when the tech businesses come in. They start having all of these brilliant solutions and ideas. The corporate world has got much more money and it's much more innovative. And then you've got the pressures to reduce agency spend. And all of this stuff is a very quick way of saying they've got all the kit, they've got the budget. They are, like marketeers in agencies, 1 or 2 man bands. You know, they've not got 20, 30 people where they can share all of this stuff and do it all together. You've got to be really smart with your time. And I think that's where technology has really helped and been that sort of catapult for the in-house world. And then, that proximity to, you know, using the brand to leverage great talent and get talent interested in coming and working for your company. Now, for agencies, it's a bit different, but they've got massive issues right now attracting recruiters.
Yeah. The challenge that I see in recruitment is that most people leading recruitment teams, whether it's in-house or agency, is that most people leading teams have learned recruitment in the 90s.
Yeah.
When this kind of technology didn't exist. Yeah. And most people who were successful in the 90s and successful in the noughties before this technology became really, really powerful are telling their teams, I was great at this, do it my way. This is how to do it. Don't get distracted by shiny new things and just do it this way and it'll work. That's, I think, maybe, and it won't be, it'll be the same in lots and lots of other industries. It's the same in, you talked about the legal industry. It's exactly the same in the legal industry. That industry is like toast. It's so ripe for disruption. Tell me about the, like, in terms of like human time to run demand generation, where does all the kind of funnel now, how should it work? Who should be doing it? Because right now we've got a situation where, or in most organizations, we've got a situation where recruiters are doing a lot of heavy lifting. Mm-hmm. They're doing, the job gets signed off. They identify 100 people that might be able to do the job. They then call those 100 people or email them all or do something to make contact with them all cold.
Yeah.
And I think according to LinkedIn, 80% of people are not in the market for a job. So in 1999, when I started in recruitment, you could only really use marketing to make candidates aware about opportunities. And so you had to do a lot of one-to-one conversations.
Mm.
Do you think all that heavy lifting is still needed, or do you think there's other, does marketing pick that up? Where's the activity transferred?
Well, I like the idea that actually the recruiters go back to doing what they do really well. Like if you got into recruitment 10, 15, 20 years ago, the chances are you did it because you really love speaking to people, helping people, and actually that whole transactional piece of finding somebody else a job, or getting to know and understand companies and their structure and culture and being able to sell that on. And, I love the kind of the nuance of recruitment for me, that I say old fashioned and I don't want it to be, but that for me is the reason why I'm still here and doing this in this industry, is because I really think that the marketing strategy today can actually help the business get back to doing what they do really well. And technology is a massive kind of proposition for that. I think that the recruiter's job should and can really evolve really quickly if there's an embracement of, marketing doing the heavy lifting. And we used to do that very much at Broadbean, and definitely at Bullhorn. Like you said, we'd have, of the 3 different segments that we would operate in, we'd have different percentages of billings that we as marketers would be responsible for. And that was through the entire demand gen funnel, down to country, down to region, location, all of that sort of stuff. And we'd have teams of people that we would work collaboratively with. So that integration between sales and marketing, recruiters and marketing, should really be so tight that there's no definition. There's a joke around schmarketing at the moment, and it isn't just, sort of having too many drinks on a Friday night or a Thursday night whenever you go out. It's about that whole joining up of the process and figuring out who can do the best at what part of the process. And I did a presentation at Expo, the Recruitment Agency Expo, just last week. And my talk was on things like AI, automation, and agencies. But the same applies for any recruiter, really. If you break down the recruitment process, and there's that kind of the business development, getting the job on in the first place, that candidate piece, finding the right people, attraction and engagement. There's that whole sort of onboarding and reputation management. And then you've got to analyze everything you do. And I've simplified the recruitment process so much, I know, but at a very top level, those 4 stages are what you're doing. Now, if you apply marketing to pretty much all but one of those, you've got a brilliant kind of space. You apply marketing to everything and make sure that the recruiters are doing the job that they can really do very well, which is that relationship management piece. Once the engagement's there, then you've got a massive amount of opportunity, and yeah, people are doing the jobs that they're really good at. I mentioned Megan earlier on. Marketing is full of people that are both creative, analytical, and process-driven. Salespeople are relationship developers, and they're really great at negotiating and closing. But they're not going to be able to do the analytics, the kind of content piece, the sort of following the process, yes, but then when you put the process on, you make it so rigid, you remove that relationship flow. And I live with a salesperson, so I know this. If you box them in, then that's it. World goes tits up, and it becomes a massive nightmare. You give them free flow to develop the relationship how they want to, and kind of, make sure that there's check-ins along the way and they're giving you that kind of feedback, then yeah, it's all really great. And support them on that journey with great content. And you've got a really great marriage between sales and marketing, recruitment and marketing.
Yeah, so Steve Ward makes a good point, which is that his view is that, especially in recruitment agencies, one of the reasons why marketing is still today not given as much attention as it should is because it's been, up until recently, and especially social media, is because up until recently, it's been almost like impossible to measure the ROI on your tweets and measure the ROI on what you're doing on Facebook and your emails and but now, because marketing automation technology or demand generation technology like Candidate ID can measure the impact of everything that you do and what demand it's driven, and the impact of every channel, and the impact of every content format, and every content subject, and and what days of the week are performing best, and what times of the day are performing best, filtered according to different locations and skill sets and all that kind of thing. You can really measure to the nth degree the performance of marketing, which is something that you just couldn't do even 10 years ago. And that's what he says of it. And I agree.
I mean, I agree with Steve, but I also know that, 10 years ago, I was getting a return on the events, or I was getting a return that wasn't digital in return. So, if I look back at Martin Wood Anson, we used to do a lot of work with the ACCA and SEMA, and we'd host these events for candidates. And it was, it was a brilliant year. It was 2007, 2008. And it was just before everything went a bit tits up. But at the same time, we'd have those events. We'd have maybe 100 recent grads, or we'd have 100 people about to qualify into the next level. And we'd bring along a couple of key clients. And actually, the placements that were made were all tracked and they were all measured. And so I kind of roll my eyes a bit when you've got business leaders or even other marketeers saying, you can't measure everything, or how can you measure the effect of an event? Well, you can if you know what your objective is in the first place. I wouldn't ever recommend spending money on an event if I didn't know that we'd either meet people that we'd never met before, or meet people that we've met, but actually that relationship can move on another level. And so even things like pretty much, I suppose, the first 2 years of Broadbean, their marketing strategy was just be everywhere. And it didn't cost everything. It didn't cost masses and masses of money. We didn't have millions and millions of pounds in the bank. I would have loved that, but we didn't. We were just really smart about the amount of exposure. And I often just turned up with a truckload of beans and we would just go and do our job, because we'd have had the briefing. We would have all been aligned on what the objectives were. And we were all absolutely able to come back and brief, this is who I've met, all the data goes into the database, and we would check and track with everybody else because we have that relationship internally as well. So I think it's, have a long, hard look about the business that you're operating in right now. Is it collegiate? Is it collaborative? Or is it really, a bunch of individuals just operating on their own? Because again, if that's the case, you've got a lot of work to do before you can bring something like Demand Gen in. Because what Demand Gen does is it basically makes you share. And you have to share, between the success of marketing and the content that's been written, and maybe that's external and it's got to be briefed. You share that with with sales and recruitment guys. They've got to share their insights in order for that content to be written in the first place. The leads that come in, you need feedback constantly on whether or not the quality is right. Are you hitting the right marks? Have you made sure that that point of engagement is deep enough? Have we got a bounce rate that's on our leads that, looks like our website? All of that stuff needs to be really, really integrated within the structure of a business. But once it is, oh my God, you can fly. And actually talked about the jobs and who can do that. You only really need 2 or 3 people who can operate systems like Candidate ID, which is absolutely fab and made me get all a bit like, I just want to go back and use it. And, stuff like that, being able to get hold of really great systems and support mechanisms to be able to do your job faster and without spreadsheets and, putting data in here and reading analytics there and transferring that across to your Google or whatever. So basically having it all in one place is a massive, massive help. And it makes it really exciting, because suddenly then the opportunities are kind of endless. And I really do think that, any businesses, and you've got a couple of clients that are coming through at the moment, but being able to really look at their return on investment based on, even if they just put it down to the software cost. Yeah, how much time have they saved? How effective now are their channels that they're using for advertising? Is their website performing better? Have they got a less bounce rate? Have they got a longer time on site? Are people registering for their news alerts as well as their jobs? And then building those communities up and that engagement up. The more engaged your communities are, the more likely you are to make a placement faster and just be much more successful. So I really do think that the demand gen strategies, when fully embedded, can probably 2x your time without them, instantly. And obviously that instantly thing is however long it takes you to implement it properly. But to adopt a full demand gen strategy.
So I'm starting to get some starting to get some response from recruiters who are applying a demand gen strategy, and they're telling me that they're able to reduce their time to shortlist by up to 60%.
Yeah.
If they're already quite sophisticated, it could be 40%. If they're not currently doing anything like this at all, it could be as much as 60%. The reason being, they can go onto their demand gen product and they can filter all of their candidates according to an engagement score. They can see in real time, what's that person been doing? Who's the hottest? Who's ready for a conversation today? And who is, who they should just keep warm by sending them things. The other thing that they're really, really enjoying about demand generation is the ability to be able to nurture people in a personalized basis at scale. Yeah. So to be able to understand that, automate the fact that Claire prefers content about skills sent through email on a Tuesday, whereas Adam, and in video, whereas Adam likes content about industry insights sent on a Wednesday morning through text message and in an infographic format. So the ability to be able to really segment people automatically according to their behavior means that they're able to land their message with more people, and they're bringing more people kind of through that funnel. The question that I've got is, because my vision for demand generation, it changes what most in-house teams look like, because there's more marketing people, and there are less recruiters. For an agency, for an average agency that I see and I talk to, I mean, it totally changes. My vision completely changes what that looks like. And there are, in a company with 2 marketers, there's maybe going to be more like 6 marketers. And for the 30 recruiters, there only needs to be 17 of them, or the 30 can be producing a lot more potentially. So the structure is all completely changing. Does that vision kind of ring true with you?
Yeah, and I kind of think as well about those agencies that have been established, maybe for the last sort of 5 to 10 years, who try to do something different and try to be different, or have got that sort of marketing savvy element about them, so they know the power of the brand that they've got, that they all have that sort of culture whereby they live and breathe as a community, essentially as a recruitment community rather than a recruitment agency. And that kind of talent sharing that goes on internally could also then be a really great platform for the technologies that are coming through, like candidate ID. And I just think that the sort of optimized skills that we've got could transfer really quite easily. You'll find, there'll be people who are naturally much more sort of digitally sophisticated than others, but actually those others have got really great personable skills, and so can stand on stage or can stand in an interview or can convey really great messaging in front of clients. And so there, there's a place for everybody, I think, in almost the new recruitment process. And I think it's just about, taking a look and figuring out, what do I really love doing? What really excites me? Because there's nothing better. And I've met, probably hundreds of brilliant recruiters over the time that I've been in this industry. And I get people come and talk to me all the time about, we're doing this, we're trying that. And actually what they really come across as is just loving their job. And there's no better thing than, having a connection who you can call up and go, look, I've got this opportunity for you. Is this what you were looking for? Is this what you're doing? And they jump at it because you know them and you know that they're really excited to kind of get on with it. And that's what recruitment is. It's about, finding those people or striking up a relationship with someone who would trust you to go and do something because you've got that relationship. And this sort of technology brings that really, really to the front of the process. And I just, I've kind of, I got really kind of futurist and excited when I discovered that writing letters ahead of 70 calls a day, otherwise I get hit in the head by a bloody coat hanger, back in the day of publishing sales, made it easier for me to connect with people because they would have seen my name. And then when I call them a day later, they're like, oh yeah, it's on the top of my pile. And lawyers really very much back in the day and still are paper driven. So a letter worked brilliantly.
Yeah.
Now, like you say, we've got so many different channels and so many preferences in how we want to digest information. But there's so much noise out there. And every other industry selling something to somebody is going to be going hell for leather to talk to them as well. It's not just about the job that they do. It's about whether or not they've done the shopping or if the kettle's broke like mine has. And, my husband's sending me links to John Lewis and all of this stuff is happening day to day for everybody. And so you need to find a way to be really subtle, but to be really engaging at the same time. And this does everything.
Yeah, I completely agree because there is a huge amount of competing priorities in people's lives today. So if you're a recruitment company or an in-house team that's trying to nurture potential candidates, you're not competing with other employers. You're competing with Tesco, and you're competing with the Daily Mail, and you're competing with Uniform Dating, and you're competing with all sorts of different things that might take their attention. So especially in that top of the funnel where they're not actually looking for a job, but you need to be kind of nurturing them. From my vision for demand generation is that in-house teams are able to reduce their time to shortlist because they just know their candidate database much, much better. And they're able to create bigger shortlists, therefore, just from a numbers perspective, create a better quality of shortlist. For a recruitment agency, I think there's actually even bigger benefits because they can do what they can do in terms of that candidate demand generation. They can do exactly the same in terms of potential customers as well. And they can really reduce the amount of cold calling that they need, which recruiters don't have the best reputation for. So if they can reduce that.
Well, who takes a call nowadays? I'm fortunate I can work from here, or I can work from the office. But if there's a number come up on my mobile and I don't know who it is, I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to wait for it to get a voicemail and then check it. And I'm needing to be quite open right now. Running my own business and doing all this stuff is kind of time precious and time sensitive. And again, it's that I just don't know the value of it. And I don't think I ever really did see the value. And even, back to my own experience of picking up the phone and calling through a directory of people. They don't want to hear from me. They didn't want to hear about a legal directory that was, the most cutting edge thing that they've ever heard of. And people don't want to hear from a total stranger who's presuming enough to know what your next job is.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
It's not in that world anymore.
So when a sales team 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the sales director would get in on a Monday morning and say to the sales team, right, who are you calling this week? And they go, I'm going to call that list again, A to Z. Now they don't have to do that because they can if they apply an effective demand gen approach, they can serve themselves up with absolute.
It's always on. Yeah, it's always on. And if you've got the intelligence behind your marketing campaigns and you've got content like literally virtually 24/7 pipelined in across all your channels, and you're mapping to, and the work up front, I think once that's done, all of this stuff is happening in the background. And like you say, being served up, you have just been mentioned in the local newspaper about expansion, bits and pieces, or if you've got, you know that you've got a new office that's coming and you need to start hiring for it, or you've got a new business premises that you're acquiring, all of those intelligent sort of markers will already be picked up in your marketing strategy. They will be picked up. Keyword searches and even things like your own PR piece will be bringing back those filters and driving the content that then drives the engagement all in the background and then increases the level of connection and people coming into that top of the funnel. So I like the fact that it can't be, once it's set and it's sorted, it's a team-to-team kind of communication piece, verifying and just checking in and making sure that the roadmap is still the right direction. Because the more hands that get on content, the more hands that you have to rely on to write your content in the first place, it becomes sticking points and it stops the process from really being effective.
Yeah.
And actually, like I say, let recruiters do their recruiting job, let marketeers do the marketing job, and the marketing job just so happens to be, and I think I've always said this, before, during, and after a sale. And so it's bigger than a sales job. It's bigger than a recruitment job. But let it do it. Let it work. It's now sort of like 80% marketing, 20% recruitment, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, I completely agree. Steve Orrs just made a comment, which is, remember when all our clients began with the letters A, B, and C, because that's how far we got in the yellow pages. You must have been very effective, to be honest, Steve.
Well, I only got to B for the brands. I really like.
So we've got a question here from Jay, a question. I find it a bit difficult seeing the similarity between recruitment and sales. My understanding of sales and marketing is to present a product of value to the prospect, which we think they want, in front of them, promising to get specific results. Mm-hmm. However, in recruitment, the target is to fulfill your client needs by getting them the right candidates. So how come we're treating these candidates as if they're sales prospects, but actually we don't know what they want? Well, the similarity is the fact that most people are not in the market for a job opportunity. So if you want to convert all those people who are not in the market, which according to LinkedIn is 80% of people are not looking for opportunities, then that's how you need to be nurturing those people. And it's marketing that does that heavy lifting. It's marketing that leads them through the funnel. It's marketing that leads them on a journey. And the thing with marketing automation or demand generation is you give people the information they're looking for, and you kind of, the yellow brick road kind of lays out in front of them as they give you the signs that that's where they want to go. So that's kind of what the similarity is. Jeremy Thornton says he loves the LinkedIn stat, but he doesn't trust any of them. I don't know. It's just I'm just passing on what I've been told. Anyway, Claire, we've got 4 minutes.
Yeah.
We've got 4 minutes. Just give us just what you've left. You're not with Broadbean. You're not with Bullhorn. Sorry. What are you doing now? What should people be talking to you about?
So I set up my own consultancy a couple of months back. It's called Talent Stories. It's a marketing consultancy and concierge service. And by that, I mean, everything from a marketing strategy perspective. I can talk to you about demand gen, obviously, and how you can then start to build that into your business. But I also have massive background in sort of building brands, brand awareness, employer branding. They're my kind of favorite topics, if you like, in terms of marketing, but also as well offering a management and mentoring service for recruitment agencies and also in-house recruiters and tech businesses. So if you've got junior marketers in there and you find that they were kind of in the situation I was in with no real sort of marketing intelligence within the business, then give me a shout. And I love to sort of nurture the next generation up, because I kind of feel like there's an opportunity right now. It's about turning this industry as a whole, kind of facing marketing and kind of embracing all of the opportunities that are there, and upskilling, junior marketers or new marketers into the industry, which is a phenomenal place to be, is a really good thing for me to do. And I really like it. So I've kind of chosen to do the stuff that I really love doing. And so yeah, Talent Stories. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I also do a lot of work in terms of content creation and helping businesses as well kind of align their content strategy.
Yeah, cool. That's brilliant, Claire. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
I'm always perpetually just 19, so you know, that kind of wide-eyed and naivety, but at the same time knowledgeable, and you know exactly where I'm going.
Yeah, perfect. Great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thanks for everybody that's
Brilliant.
tuned in, and really enjoyed it. Bye for now.
You too. Take care. Thanks, everybody.